Jamaica, Jamaica, land we love.
Good afternoon from Castle Goring, from Mickey and from me. Well, I'm awfully sorry. I'm not going to be modern and woke, and I'm not going to be fashionable and chic. I'm therefore not going to slap anybody across their face, nor am I going to attack people who are old enough to be my elders, because I'm not going to be doing anything Hollywoodian. And indeed, isn't it wonderful that after all that kerfuffle, all that speculation, that Meghan and Harry's people leaked about the fact that they were going to be, wait for it, do you remember? They were going to be presenting the best actor, actress, film award. I think it was film, wasn't it? But I mean, it could have been actually the best of everything, because they are the best of everything. And there's no two ways about it. They are just the absolute end in class and classiness, and leading such quiet, shy, retiring lives. What a pity they weren't there, because Harry would have doubtless been able to give Will Smith instructions. But of course, Will Smith actually reacted to provocation. Of course, quite forgetting that, first of all, my right to hit you ends where your nose begins. And secondly, despite the provocation, one doesn't brawl like one is a street urchin if one is in a civilized place. Very, very untoward. And I gather that he's trying to justify it on the grounds that he was provoked. Well, isn't it amazing that we live in a world where everybody feels entitled to behave as much of a savage as they want to, and then, having done so, to be patted on the back for having done so? I do like Will Smith as a comedian, but I have to say, this is yet another example of why people really shouldn't ever emulate the example of celebrities, especially actors and actresses. I mean, one or two of them are worth emulating, but it has to be said, most of them are not. And with the decline of the golden age of Hollywood and the control that the studios had over their stable of semi-savages who would be booted out if they didn't behave as if they were civilized, because that was the penalty they paid for indulging in untoward behavior. Nowadays, no such thing as a restraint, and so it's self-indulgence all the way. And then, after self-indulgence comes self-justification. I was provoked. I was provoked into doing something that I shouldn't have done under any circumstances. But the fact that I was provoked makes it all right. Now, where have we heard reasoning like that before? Mickey? Mickey says she's holding up a card that says, Meghan and Harry? No, Mickey, Meghan and Harry would never do anything like that. Oh, no, never. They would only present Oscars for the best film. At least that's what their PR people say. But isn't it interesting how they manage to be kept in the public eye at all times and under all guises? So, without further ado, Shall we go to the first question? Angela Reid says, Dear Lady C, given the furore caused by Miss Hannah, I think William and Catherine handled it with great dignity, especially with the Sugars deliberately criticising her every move. However, does this now mean that Prince Charles and his team will think about what to do about the Commonwealth once he is king? The Commonwealth love the Queen, but should Charles be worried if more Commonwealth countries decide to remove him as head of state? It could be damaging for the monarchy and wouldn't be a good look if this happened en masse at the start of his reign. Jamaica has started the rumblings, but what if this becomes more widespread? Your thoughts, please. Well, I have to tell you, as a Jamaican, you can always trust Jamaicans to stir up the pot and cause trouble. I mean, really, you know, and there is actually a reason for it, because the people who were white and who didn't die were the hardiest stock. So the white Jamaicans are of a very hardy stock, because many people, Europeans, when they went to the West Indies, died like flies. So the ones who survived were really hardy stock. The blacks, Jamaica was for centuries Britain's #1 colony, and therefore the cream of the crop went to Jamaica. The biggest, strongest, most strapping male slaves went to Jamaica, and the females who were bought were also regarded as the cream of the crop for breeding purposes as well as for work. Because of that, Jamaica has a very powerful, potent genetic mix. And I've always said, Jamaicans are positively positive or positively negative. No matter what, they're just positive at all times. And yes, a hornet's nest has been stirred up. To the surprise of everybody. I think I made this point the other day, and I'm going to make it again, because the people who organised the trip in England and in Jamaica had absolutely no idea what was going to happen. It's been Lisa Hannah kicking off something, Mark Golding wading in, he is the leader of the opposition, because he can't allow her to trump him. Then we have Andrew Holness also wading in, because he will lose credibility if he doesn't poke his oar in. And it has been, despite all of the sensationalism and despite the sensation of it all, it's actually been, believe it or not, on the ground where the people are concerned, it's been a very positive trip, because Catherine and William were absolutely greeted with open arms. I think there were 60 protesters. 60. Of course, you wouldn't realise that there were tens of thousands of people who were positive about the thing, because the press, of course, have to go with the sensationalism of the 60. But it has highlighted an underlying problem, which was always there and has been there for years, which is, does a colony retain its links to the former colonial master? Or does a colony, when it becomes independent, then it comes of age, does it sever head of state ties? Now, people don't seem to understand that whether Jamaica has the Queen as head of state or not, it remains within the Commonwealth. The two things are actually quite separate. But my understanding, having spoken to people not only in Jamaica but in Britain, is that now everybody is terrified because the link has been clearly established between the mischief-making of racist claims by Harry and Meghan against their family. And this has been weaponized by all sorts of pro-Republican people of a political persuasion. And not only in Jamaica, there is now a real fear. I understand that there is a report in the making about the long-term damage that Harry and Meghan's conduct and accusations might have upon the Commonwealth, not only now, but going forward. Because you have all sorts of people beating racist drums and saying, oh, colonialism is over. Of course it's over. Jamaica's been independent since 1962. Do the math. I mean, it's ludicrous. Jamaica, in terms of a human being, is a fully fledged adult. In terms of a society, it's also pretty ancient because it was the second of the West Indian islands to be discovered by Christopher Columbus, Santo Domingo being the first. In 1492, Jamaica was discovered in 1494. It has been occupied since the early 1500s. Jamaica has a far more ancient society than the United States of America or Canada. I make those points for what they're worth, because there are serious concerns that unless William and Catherine and Charles deal with the race issue constructively and sensibly, and I have to tell you, there's a lot of doubt that they're going to do it, because they need to garrote Harry and Meghan. And if they don't garrote Harry and Meghan and neutralize them, and they don't want to do it, well, at least Charles doesn't want to do it. I'm not going to speak for William. You can read into that what you may. But William has handled the matter, and Catherine, brilliantly. Their tour has been an outstanding success despite the provocation and despite the inaccurate reportage, because people have embraced them. Not only in Belize, there were six protesters. There were hundreds who were protesting against the protesters. That's disappeared. Nobody knows about that. In Jamaica, 60. And that ridiculous Lisa Hanna. And I don't care that she says she didn't do it. She did it. She did it. And I know that she did it deliberately. Because if she hadn't done it deliberately, she wouldn't have done it at all. She's too proficient and too much of a performer and too accomplished in the public arena for that to have been an accident. I think that William has come out very well out of this by making it clear that he does not expect these countries to remain monarchies. If they do, so much the better. If they don't, he respects that as well. He's come out, he's said it, and I agree with him that he needs to be more proactive than Charles and the Queen have been. And I agree with him that never explain, never complain doesn't always work properly or effectively. I know this because I have been in the public eye for 50 years, and my public profile has been rather a mixed bag, to put it mildly. And there were times when I wanted to come out punching, and my mother especially said, "Oh no, you've got to rise above it." Big mistake, as it turned out. So I agree with William. There are times when you need to be proactive, and you do need to be on top of some situations. The thing is, which situations? And the race situation is something, and the people keep on saying about the independence of these countries. They are already independent. Having the Queen as head of state doesn't affect the independence of the country. It simply affects the judicial outcome in certain situations. Otherwise, it makes no real difference. And as a Jamaican, I can see, I've said it before, I can see why some Jamaicans want to be a republic. I can also see why other Jamaicans, and indeed other members of Barbadians, for instance, several Bajans, are furious that the Barbados government pushed through making Barbados into a republic. And what Harry and Meghan have done is they have made it impossible for people who wanted to remain a monarchy to effectively stand up and say yes, because they can now be accused of being racist, of being thisist, thatist. You know, I don't know if Harry and Meghan had true malice of forethought. Some people say that she is a very slick operator and a very dangerously effective strategist, and that she knows exactly what she's doing when she pokes the fire to get it to the flame to shine and rise brightly. But let us give them the benefit of the doubt. Even if they did not understand that these claims on Oprah were going to be incendiary and have long-term consequences where the Commonwealth is concerned. Now that they know it, shouldn't they do the decent thing and come clean? And well, of course they're not going to come clean. They're not going to backtrack. And indeed, the way they did it, because remember Harry said he'd never say who it was, meaning that by keeping the subject open for accusations to be levelled against everybody except the Queen and Prince Philip. Very effective and damaging tool. I think even if somebody had said something untoward, what breed of human being would betray the whole of their family by saying something like that, and potentially be damaging not only an ancient institution, but going forward the whole of the Commonwealth. Remember, the Queen made Harry and Meghan important members of her Commonwealth society. Is this the way to reward her? Or, as one or two people have said to me, who know them, incidentally, this hasn't come from people who don't know them, could this be nothing but spite because they were stripped of their roles in the Commonwealth, and they knew once they were stripped that if they made an accusation like this, that it would damage the royal family's standing in the Commonwealth in perpetuity unless they withdrew their accusation, which I don't think we're in danger of seeing them doing, because first of all, they couldn't even agree on what the accusation was or when it took place. So that tends to actually suggest that something is seriously amiss in their account. Should Charles do something about it? I think William has done something about it. I think he is addressing the issue and he's doing it now, and it should be done. I say this as a Jamaican, it should be done now. All these countries, if they want to become republics, the sooner the better. Kiss them goodbye. Welcome their departure. It's not necessarily ingratitude. It's that baby wants to leave home because baby's no longer a baby. Baby's nickname is baby, but baby's now a fully fledged adult, middle-aged, and wants to leave home. Fine, let baby leave home. I think ultimately what has happened in Jamaica will not damage the royal family as long as the royal family makes it absolutely clear that none of them is a racist and nobody made any adverse comments. I think the time has come for them to actually show more mettle than they have been showing so far. And if Harry and Meghan are antagonized, so be it. It does not behoove you to have an asp encircling your bosom. Don't take my word for it. Ask Cleopatra. B. Barclay says, Dear Lady C, with your Jamaican connections, can you confirm if Toya Holness, the Global Press Secretary for Archewell or however they pronounce it this week, is the cousin of the Jamaican Prime Minister? Also, rumour on social media is that Harry made a call to Usain Bolt and told him not to meet William and Catherine. Do you know if this is true? Neither is true, to the best of my knowledge. I have checked with friends of mine in Jamaica who have assured me that Holness is a very common name in the West Indies and indeed in the black community. So just because they both have the name Holness, because his name is Andrew Holness, hers is Toya Holness, and she's American, she's trained in America, lives in America, educated in America, blah, blah, blah. So if they are cousins, they would be very distant cousins. and there is little or no likelihood that they would be coordinates, because Andrew Holness is a moderate and Harry and Meghan are illiberal and dramatically left of centre. Champagne Marxists, in fact, Learjet Marxists, not champagne, Learjet Marxists. Usain Bolt has complained on more than one occasion that Harry dumped him. How likely do you think it is? I mean, I don't think even Harry has the nerve to ring up somebody he's dumped and tell him, don't meet my brother and sister-in-law. And even if he did, I don't think Usain Bolt, who I understand is a capital guy. I know people who know him. He's a capital guy and he is dignified and respectful. As I have to tell you, most Jamaicans are. Most Jamaicans are very hospitable, very well-mannered, and I'm not referring to the upper classes and the middle classes. I'm also referring to the working classes. Most Jamaicans have beautiful manners. They may be sometimes a bit rough around the edges, but they still are very kind, considerate, generous-spirited people. I do not believe that Usain Bolt is the sort of person who would allow Harry, an ex-friend, a dumpster, in fact, because he's dumped Usain Bolt. So he's not only a dumper, he's a dumpster. That Usain Bolt would have been influenced by that, and if he needed to play a part in the visit, which he didn't, because he's a sportsman. He's not a football player. You know, they had Raheem Sterling, who is a Jamaican football player. He was there in Trenchtown with Catherine and William. And I have to tell you, to show you the rank misinformation and the propaganda and the twisting of fact to which the media subject you, the public. Because it was a football field and enclosed, as usually football fields and any other field that has a ball game, you know, like a tennis court, they're usually enclosed. And because they were enclosed and people were enthusiastically pushing their hands through the fencing to greet Catherine and William and Raheem Sterling, and each of them responded positively. But the media tried to make out by twisting and cropping the photographs that, you know, to make it evocative of the children in a concentration camp being, I mean, what sick society are we living in that the media, which is supposed to be conveying accurate news, can twist things to such an extent that they are creating a link that is so odious, and the public is supposed to believe that the people were herded together like cattle in a pen. I'm sorry, it's just revolting. Mary Partridge says, when I lived in the British High Commission in the 80s, they used to say that it was 11 or 13 families that ran the country. Remember Michael Manley? Mary Partridge, I don't know what you were living in the British High Commission on Trafalgar Road in Kingston, because you don't say, but it wasn't 11 or 13 families. It was supposed to be the 22 families, because my family was supposed to be one of the 22 families. And yes, that was one of Michael Manley's concoctions to create class and colour prejudice and play upon them, and he succeeded in doing so. He also succeeded in damaging the economy of the country, because he forgot that a sensible and competent and capable and conscionable leader concerns himself with the welfare of his citizens, and that includes food in their belly. And you cannot be a responsible or capable leader if, to gain the approbation of your citizens, and indeed in Michael Manley's case, to cast himself as one of the 3 leaders of the Third World, along with Nyerere and Kaunda, that he was prepared to be irresponsible enough to indulge in inflammatory rhetoric which would damage the economy of the country, and it did. The 22 families included every single member of every single family and everybody else they were married to, and those families. So it was basically the establishment of Jamaica. And it sounded glamorous to say 22 families. And he said, which was completely untrue, that the 22 families controlled the wealth of the nation and were oppressing black people. I mean, I ask you. But it played well with his more ignorant supporters at the time. But within 6 to 8 years, they had turned on him and they cast him out ignominiously. And Eddie Siago was elected by a landslide. I despair for our societies because we have politicians, some are decent, but most play to the gallery in the most destructive way and don't have the courage or the gumption to speak unpalatable truths and to say to people, a country cannot be rich if you impoverish everybody. NZ Lander says, oh, it's like a New Zealander. Okay. Looking back on our history and certain issues in our country, there is the chance that the same thing is going to be stirred up here by a small minority wanting to use the Harry and Meghan racism lies for their own purposes. Although the majority here want to retain ties to the crown and look forward to King Charles and Queen Camilla, there is always the vocal minority that will try to cause trouble. The worst thing the British royal family did was to let the Ginge and Winge duo get away with saying and doing whatever they liked without consequences. Those two should have been stripped of everything the minute they did that Oprah chat. Well, the chickens are coming home to roost. It has become very apparent that Harry and Meghan's one or two not stray but very incisive comments have long-term effects and will cause long-term damage. I know what I would do at this point, and I would hope that the royal family begins to understand the danger and understands that there are times in life when you have to be decisive and you have to unmask people if they are going to bring you down unfairly. Teresa Belleville says, I fear that if Jamaica becomes a republic, they may well become a spoil of a larger and more hostile country, desiring a port or missile base in the West Indies. Echoes from the Bay of Pigs waft over the history's drama, hinting at not only Castro's hostilities to his own people, but threat on the entire region and against the United States, the Cuban Missile Crisis wrought. Whether Jamaica becomes a republic or not, Teresa Belleville, it doesn't matter. Jamaica is an independent country. It can do what it wants in terms of alliances. It doesn't need the permission of the Queen because basically the Queen's function is to a large extent ceremonial, and there are soft power aspects, but as happened in Australia when they tried to wield them, it was quite disastrous. So I don't think the Governor General is going to be doing any such thing. And yes, it was mooted that Goat Island in Jamaica would become a base for the Chinese. And Andrew Holness, the Prime Minister who, in my opinion, was bounced into behaving rather less hospitably towards William and Catherine than he would normally have liked to behave. He scuppered the deal because the Chinese want a base directly above with access to the Panama Canal. The Chinese are encroaching via economics. Then the Monroe Doctrine, which has held for quite a significant length of time, let us see how much longer it holds for. Because, you know, if the Russians are neutralized and made impotent, that means the Chinese become stronger more quickly, and the balance of power is affected detrimentally, which means that they, with all of their influence and their deals surrounding America, will be encroaching on the doctrine, on the Monroe Doctrine. Let's wait and see. You know, I have tried to point out that the Ukraine situation is fraught with danger, not only for the Ukrainian people, but for us in the West. And that China is a power that will benefit if we are not very careful. And I think, seeing what is going on and hearing what I hear behind the scenes, that the State Department is rather wiser to that fact than President Biden. Let us see what happens. Gail Marks says, hello, so happy you mentioned that the Africans actually captured their own people to sell as slaves. I am of black Jamaican heritage and can't stand this ignorance amongst people from African heritage. Gail Marks, thank you for your comment. I've read it out because I think it's very prescient and appropriate. And you know, all this moaning and groaning about black people are the only people who were ever enslaved. No, they weren't. Fewer of them were enslaved than white people. They were enslaved in a less significant way for much of history. It just so happens that they were enslaved in larger proportions in the West Indies, and in the South of America. And let us remember, the British citizens in the West Indies were significantly better off than their counterparts in the United States of America post-emancipation. In the West Indies, we never had Jim Crow laws. We never had racial segregation. Remember that. It is a small and vociferous element of American blacks who are inciting other blacks whose position is entirely different from theirs and historically radically different. And we need to be mindful of that. Now, I say this as somebody who, when I was 12 years old, was appalled to discover that there was segregation in the southern states of the United States of America. I'm not excusing what the Americans did to their black people. I'm not excusing it. I'm just trying to make the point that the black experience in America was entirely different from the black experience in the West Indies once emancipation took place. And also that even in the United States of America, things have moved on significantly from those days. I mean, you know, segregation stopped in the 1960s. That's too recent, but it's a heck of a long time for most people. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating. America twice elected a mixed race president because Barack Obama is mixed race. Black father, white mother. The Spirited Planter says, Lady C, I just read an article on the Jamaican Gleaner news website. And to those of you who don't know, the Jamaican Gleaner is a brilliant paper, always has been. I need to get back to where I was. News site, and was shocked by the pro-black and white undertones in it. I am not Jamaican, but I have always heard that the island of many peoples of different ethnicities, and that it is one of Jamaica's strengths. I think that multi-ethnic view of Jamaica is in danger. It seems that the Black Lives Matter views have taken hold. I think that any white or white-looking Jamaican will find themselves second-rate citizens in the country, especially if they hold an opposing view on republicanism. Sad and dangerous. Do I agree? I do and I don't. What is happening in Jamaica in terms of the disparagement of all other cultures but the black culture started in the 1970s with Michael Manley. This predated Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter may have given it a new potency, and which is sad, because I have to tell you, my family has personally suffered because of racism. My grandfather was murdered. My father was shot at point blank range and nearly murdered. My brother-in-law was murdered. Several of my first and second cousins were murdered or kidnapped. That's before we get on to friends. Those awful days hopefully are at an end. I thought they were at an end 15 or 20 years ago. And it would be a very great pity if Black Lives Matter, which is an American thing and has no relevance in the West Indies, as I tried to point out a bit earlier. But, you know, sometimes Black West Indians don't understand that their experience is entirely different and they might be influenced. I hope they won't be. I really do hope they won't be. But the word used to be, they used to say, the negrification of Jamaican society. And I can't think of a word that actually describes the phenomenon more clearly than that, because it was the Africanization. It's not Africanization, and you can't just say black, because it doesn't make sense to say black. So they used to say that the negrification of the Jamaican society was entirely due to Michael Manley playing the race card. Well, I agree, because we had the most harmonious and progressive race relations in the 1950s in the world. Into the 1960s, we were having, after independence, Jamaica was one of the fastest growing economies on earth. And yes, there were inequities in the society, but they were being addressed. And in waded Michael Manley, speaking about black power and white man oppress black man and black man day come and all of that sort of thing. And I'm quoting him incidentally, by the way. And there was a very hairy period in Jamaica when, if you were white or light, where you were definitely feeling under threat. And it wasn't an imaginary threat, because people used to hurl abuse at us. But that is long, thank God, in the past. I haven't been to Jamaica recently, but I would be very surprised if there will be a repetition of any of that. And yes, Jamaica's great strength was that it's the national motto, out of many one people. And it was our great strength. And we had everybody of every race represented in Jamaica. And everybody mixed perfectly happily. Of course, there were inequities in the society, but there are always inequities. But we were doing better than everybody else. Are we doing better than anybody else now? Well, that's a moot question. But I gather that Andrew Holness and his party have been trying their utmost to redress the balance and rectify and get Jamaica back to its multiracial, multicultural, multinational background. So let us see. Amuse Her says, the Jamaicans I've spoken to are not fans of the Chinese and Indian influence. They are not supportive of Amazon outposts being built there either. No, they are not, but the fact of the matter is that Jamaica's economy was destroyed by Michael Manley playing the class and colour card, and he destroyed the tourist industry, and it took years to rebuild it. And the bauxite industry, which was one of the main industries in Jamaica. Bauxite is what makes aluminium. Went through a very, very patchy period. And, you know, Jamaica needed to make money somehow. And indeed, I'll tell you one of the ways Jamaica used to make money. The ganja trade. I'm serious. When Eddie Seaga was elected Prime Minister of Jamaica, it was after Eddie was elected Prime Minister of Jamaica. I think Reagan was then elected President of the United States. I need to get my facts straight, sorry, it's a little while ago. And the very first leader in the world that he spoke to was Eddie Seaga. And he told Eddie, and incidentally, to those of you who don't know, my family and the Seaga family have been friends for generations. I used to call his mother Aunt Babs and his father Uncle Philip. So his siblings called my parents, well, Gloria, they called Mummy Gloria because she was much younger than my father, but they called my father Uncle Michael. But Eddie, Reagan said to Eddie that he wanted him to stamp out the ganja trade in Jamaica. And Eddie said to him, well, if you can come up with cheap loans that will make it possible, we are happy to assist. Otherwise, I'm afraid it is not possible for us to assist, because my first duty is to my people, and while we're not approving of any hard drugs, we certainly wouldn't be destroying the economy of this country, because at the moment, the only thing that is keeping us afloat is ganja. Unbelievable. But there we go. Caro says, hi lovely Lady C and your fur babies. It has been suggested our royal family has been behind taking down YouTube channels who call Harry and Meghan to account. Do you think this is possibly true? And do you think if this was proven, it could damage the royal family? I do not think it's true, and it would damage the royal family. I do know that Harry and Meghan's people have employed people to shut down any YouTubers or other media outlets that are critical of them. But the royal family, no. Georgie Townsend says, if the bastards get you wiped out at YouTube, where will we be able to find you? Have you backed up all your videos? They are a gold mine of information. I'd like to know your contingency plans, as I'm really concerned that free speech is truly endangered. Then, what is your opinion of the rumour of PR companies using bot farms to make the royals out to be racist and get YouTubers' channels wiped out. Your voice must not be silenced. Several exclamation marks. Georgie Townsend, I do have plans in place to go on to another site if necessary, and maybe in tandem. I don't want to say any more because I do not believe in letting Peter know what Paul is up to. I think Jesus Christ said it rather well. Don't let your left hand know what your right is doing. But you can rest assured that there are plans in place. So don't worry, my dear. But I'm not going to say more than that. But thanks for your concern. And I will end by saying, if this has been of interest to you, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and please keep the questions coming in. Remember, this can't be done without you. God bless and goodbye.